Hi, good afternoon, Bello. How are you? Thanks so much for accepting this invitation to take part of this project.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. Very happy to be here.
Great, thank you so much. We have for those watching, we have Bello Houinato, who is participating representing Senegal. And the idea of this project is to meet, to talk with several international professionals from different countries to learn about the how to do business, how to interact with people from different markets, and learn about the cultural and communication aspects of doing business in these countries. So we have 7 questions that we've been asking all our interviewees, and we will begin now. So Bello, to begin with, please tell us a little bit about you, your experience, your work, so we can get to know a little bit about your background, please.
Well, thank you. I'm not sure if you knew exactly about this, but originally I'm from Benin. But I've worked in a good number of countries across Africa. The last time I counted, there are probably just about 2, 3 countries where I have not actually traveled to in Africa. So that's quite a lot. I'm also fortunate enough to have visited every continent, and that's something. But even though I traveled extensively, lived and worked outside Africa, I define myself as profoundly African, and I really identify with Africa. The past 10 years, I probably worked in 3, 4 countries, and that is Senegal, Cameroon, Sierra Leone, and what's the other one? And obviously Benin, because I've been traveling at least for holidays. I go to Benin, but that's probably for the fun part of it. When it comes to my work, I've dedicated my career to organizational development and transformation. In the past 10 years, I've spent most of my time either delivering directly or supporting the delivery of significant organizational transformation. And that includes the design and implementation of fit-for-purpose operational models for different organizations, business, the private and charity sector mostly, but also some public sector organization. And that includes supporting organizations that are going through turbulent times. If you're talking about deep transformation, that's what we, and that has become of even a greater concern now, because as you will appreciate, because of the growing volatility and uncertainty around the world. So I've been consulting in various aspects of OD, leadership development, executive coach, strategy development, research evaluation, program evaluations, and the likes. My background is in sociology. I hold masters in medical anthropology and a doctorate in sociology. And I'm really passionate about gender equality and justice. I'm passionate about working and developing the talents of young people. I was telling you the other day about my book that's on leadership. We can maybe briefly speak about it later in this conversation. And I have co-founded a Wakile Subaka company some 14, 15 years ago, where I'm currently the CEO. And I'm also the president of a charity organization that's called Africa Culture Action. And the purpose of that is actually ground Africa's development in its culture. So that's pretty much about me.
That's fantastic. Very exciting to understand your entire background, the different perspectives you bring. And that's exactly why I wanted to invite you to this conversation. You have a lot to add. I also want to leave everyone watching this to understand that we're going to put Bello's contact information in the article. He knows Africa inside and out. So if there's any any interest by people watching is to reach out to you, to collaborate. I welcome everybody to contact you for sure. So congratulations on all the work you've done. I mean, it's very impressive. And thanks for the possibility to share this with us here in this conversation. Fantastic. Yeah, and in the end, let's talk about your book as well, so everybody can learn a little bit more. Number two, the second question I wanted to ask. Again, you have a background of all of Africa, so we're focusing a little bit more on Senegal in this conversation, but people can feel free to reach out to you about other stuff as well. What are some of the things you recommend people to do or say when you first meet or speak with a person that they might want to initiate a new project, a business opportunity in Senegal? And also, what should they not do and say in this first encounter, as we say, right?
Well, when I first read your question, I started thinking about it. I said to myself, well, I wish somebody had said this to me about 8, 10 years ago when I started living here. But because it's such an important question, if you're engaging with people, from my experience living and working in Senegal past 8, 10 years, uh, I think personal relationship is vital. It's so important. Uh, Being able to achieve a decent level of trust. I know trust is a big word, but that's really what it is. There is something, as you will probably have heard, in Senegal that we call the teranga. So the culture and the tradition of teranga. So they say teranga is about hospitality, is feeling together. It's not just about welcoming. It's not deeper than that. Respecting others, respecting one another, it's really deep, and you will feel it when you do engage with the people. And it is not in one direction. So when the people welcome you, it is also highly expected that you return the respect that they're giving you. If not, you will not go well, obviously. Otherwise, you will think that you have reached an agreement with someone, but it will be fragile because you have not taken enough time to create that sense of mutual respect and understanding. You may be aware that Senegal is a highly collectivist culture. So in collectivist cultures, the group cohesion is very important, is essential. So it's expected from everyone to do all he or she can to protect fellow members of the group, and loyalty, therefore, is a critical feature of relationship. Loyalty, and it's in your interactions with people, you will see that it may override every other social rules, including in business. And that is the one that is really surprising. Maybe you will tell me that everywhere around the world, some degree of loyalty is expected everywhere. But here in Senegal, the way in which you will be expected to demonstrate that respect and loyalty will not be similar. So, for example, I could take one or two situations. Let us briefly talk about greetings. How you greet people. If you take time to greet people appropriately, extensively, they will really appreciate it. It's almost like a ritual. You have to stop. And even if you are just passing by, the person will really appreciate it if you stop and greet the person. When you are engaging in business, potential business adventure, the person will appreciate that you're not rushing to start talking about the business at the beginning, but you're taking time to cultivate that relationship and that sense of togetherness in the greeting. One of the other things that was a challenge for me at the beginning when I first came, I started greeting and handshaking everybody around until I realized that, well, that's, you have to be careful about that. And as you will appreciate, Senegal is a very Muslim tradition and very, very religious. So my approach is to maybe take it slowly at the beginning and try to be formal at the beginning and learn, watch my counterpart and see how the person is behaving and learn by doing rather than the jumping with my own way of doing things and only to realize that it's totally inappropriate in that particular context. So these are just some of the things that one has to be very careful about. Well, you did say something about what not to say and what not to do. One thing I believe is critical in Senegal is the religion. It's really, you've got to respect the religious beliefs and practice and traditions of the people. And that includes things like prayer time. You are not expected to invite people to meetings when it's actually a prayer time that everybody knows about, things like that. So it's a balancing act, really, in Senegal. And quite a lot of what we spoke about now are very similar in other African countries as well.
Very, very well noted. Thank you, Bello. Yeah, the religious thing is very important. Um, yeah, and again, it's personal connections. It takes time to build that when the foreigner comes to the new market there. Thank you. Moving to the third question, we recognize that it's also important to have a deeper cultural understanding of a local place when doing business there. What cultural aspects might be considered when doing business in Senegal? You mentioned a little bit the religious part, which is a cultural thing as well. But there's any other cultural aspects someone needs to take into account if they're actually starting to do business in Senegal?
So I'm currently working with a client who had set up business in Senegal some years back. About 10, he told me about 9 years back. And he got it completely wrong. And the business was closed. I was telling me the story as we started working together. But the good thing is that he's now returned to Senegal last year and is taking a much more, let me say, inclusive approach to his design and the marketing. And the reason why I'm telling you this story, even he himself is surprised at the reception that he's now receiving as a result of his effort to engage more deeply with people. And an important feature of Pierre is to understand the Senegalese business culture is deeply rooted in collectivism. Extended family networks, community obligations, these are things that heavily influence professional decisions, including, for example, things like hiring practice, financial commitments, and the like. So if you were coming from a culture that is more of an individualistic mindset, I think the earlier you realize that shift, from the individualistic and transactional business model into a more communal and relationship-focused system, is better for your business. And one of the things that I learned is the need to embrace indirect communication. I realized that one thing that is very important for people, do not be confrontational. In collectivist culture like Senegal, it's important for people to preserve harmony, and they need to save face. So uh, telling somebody something that he or she has done that was wrong in the public, in the open, will not be appreciated. Will not be appreciated, obviously. So these are some of the things that I think is important. You will also observe it from the part of your business partner. So they could be using some vague languages or delaying decision, those kind of things. And so if you don't take the just face value of what you're told there, you have to look around and behind, because there would be deeper meaning to what the person is telling you. So if it requires, for example, for you to put something in writing, or to have a gradually confirming conversations, then that's what it will take to get deeper meaning. But in a conversation, it's very important to be attentive to the nonverbal communication of the person, and that might give you additional clue as to what the person actually means. Because sometimes it might be difficult for the person just to bluntly tell you no, because it's not part of the way people deal, if you understand what I mean. So these are some of my learning, engaging with people here in Senegal. And the other aspect is that there's a high power distance society. And so things such as age, titles, and social status command absolute respect. And I think it will be important for you if you are in a meeting, for example, and because you have a younger person or someone who has been who is more exposed and is able to speak English or French fluently, and you leave the elderly person in the room who has a bigger title, for example, or who is the older than everybody else, and to start talking to this person, you will miss the points, because at the end of the day, the boss is going to make that decision. Get my point? So
Great,
that's
great.
a key characteristic of high power distant culture, as is the case in Senegal.
No, very, very good insights. People need to understand this dynamics between in the team itself, and this individual and collective approach is very important for people to understand a little better. That's why it's important to have these local partners that they can guide you before you get into the market. Great, thanks so much. Moving on to a little bit more of the communication aspect. Number 4, question 4, if someone does not speak French, which I assume, and you can explain to us better, is the business language more in Senegal. If they don't speak French, what do you suggest a foreigner to be able to do so they can communicate more successfully with the locals in Senegal, and so they can do business more effectively?
Well, somewhere, somehow, I believe you will need some good amount of French, because French is the official language. It's also a business language, but only up to a point. Beside French, even if it's not said clearly to everyone coming from outside, Wolof happens to be the most spoken language in Senegal. And funny enough, even if you start a conversation in French, very quickly it will shift into Wolof. And most of your Senegalese colleagues will start speaking Wolof long before they realize that you are not following the conversations. So it's really important. Of course, French would do, but it's critical to understand Wolof. If you do not speak Wolof, that you have partners who are able to support you. If you go to an important meeting with somebody, a business partner, for example, if you do not speak, maybe you could have an interpreter, but it should not just be any interpreter. It has to be someone who is also able to convey to you the deeper meaning of what is coming from the other side. Because conversation is going to be heavily culturally loaded. And it will be really critical to have somebody who is not just translating, but actually conveying meaning, deeper meaning. So that would probably be my advice if you're coming to Senegal. French is important, but Wolof is critical.
Very good, very good. I did not know that. Yeah, and like you said, interpreters, someone on the ground that can read these the bigger context, right? It's not just the direct wording that's used in these meetings. Very clear. Thank you. Continuing a little bit more, still communication. To get better results in visibility or sales, what are your recommendations as the most effective way to do marketing for products or services in Senegal? Someone, a company coming from abroad, any ideas how they should communicate their products and services, please?
Well, nowadays, social media is so important and it's really taking over, not just because of internet costs that's dropping. So there's a very good penetration level in Senegal. People are on TikTok, Facebook, and the likes. But of course, everything depends on the target population. Uh, if the products that you're bringing is actually targeting the elite, then you probably have a different approach to it. Maybe direct engagement, or the mainstream media and other communication platforms. But the majority of the people are easily reachable through the various platforms, social media platforms that we have. If you're targeting, however, local people with your product, then I guess you would need, for example, to use things like local radio, television, where you will probably appreciate the services of local influencers with significant reach in the population. Then they have. That I can tell you, they know exactly what they're doing. They're so good at it. So they will use video and compelling languages that would obviously be interesting for the local people. They're very good at that. It's also because of the oral tradition of the country.
Yeah.
And so therefore, radio and the local influencers, they really are able to take your message very far, especially from the capital. If you are, for example, venturing out of the capital city, yeah, you'll meet a lot of friends and mainstream media in the capital city. But when you go out there, people are a lot more on social media and radio with the local influencers. It will be critical for you, however, to respect religious calendars in their communication. For example, if you, let's say during Ramadan time, that people observe Ramadan seriously, that's the fasting time. If you were planning massive sales, during Ramadan, depending on what you're selling and what your products are, it's not going to work. And if you are engaging in an activity that requires a lot of energy and engagement when people are fasting, it's not going to work. So understanding the dynamics, the calendar, and a number of other cultural dimensions will be really critical for your marketing and communication.
No, great things to take into account, the Ramadan and this rural urban dynamic. Just quickly to complement, you mentioned social media, which is very important. Which platforms stand out more in Senegal that people
I think
use?
TikTok.
So,
TikTok is really out there. Of course, there is a lot of things on Facebook, but most people, especially the young people, are on TikTok.
okay, clear. Okay, perfect. Um, Excellent. Thank you so much. Going to the sixth question, which is now we come a little bit more to the trust building that you mentioned way in the beginning as well, cultural aspect. If a business partner in Senegal wants to know you better, invites you to a local coffee, tea place, restaurant, even a virtual happy hour through via like Zoom, what are the kinds of topics people in Senegal like to talk about that's not related to business? So you said way in the beginning, which is very important, that trust building. So what do people talk about if that's not related to business in Senegal?
Um, so, well, if you have received an invitation, I can tell you that you are on good track in building that relationship because that's obviously not the first thing your counterpart is going to do. Okay. So it does mean that a person, already has some interest and would like to build a relationship, and most importantly, would like to know you more. So I think it's important for you to pay attention to that conversation and make sure that you convey to the person an image of you that resonates with everything that we've said earlier, in terms of culture and tradition, that you actually understand the context. And then that you also, when you do not understand, that you're ready to learn. And something that I personally do is that I am very open to my ignorance on some things, and then you will see that people appreciate it, and they're very eager to teach you and tell you what is appropriate and what is not appropriate, and that's something that you will really appreciate. Obviously, one of the first thing I would say, besides the personality that you convey to the person, talking about you or your values and how you appreciate the local values and tradition. Of course, football is going to be critical. Football is so important, and you might have heard that we won the African Cup of Nations in Morocco very recently. Senegal has a very strong team. Interestingly enough, in my book that's on leadership, I dedicated a section to the leadership of Sadio Mane. And that's something that I've discussed it with a few friends, and I'm so appreciative of including Sadio Mane as a leader and analyzing his leadership, and so that it can be visible to other people. But of course, we can talk about music. Senegal has very great music and tradition and art. And wrestling, traditional wrestling is also very important. That's why I discovered in Senegal. There's so much that you can talk about that will not be sensitive. If you start criticizing religious belief or tradition, if you start talking about things that people are not really conversant about in the country, then it will become a difficult conversation at that point. But Senegal is a very open society, and people are happy to talk about pretty much everything. But some of the ones that I mentioned, like football, traditional wrestling, arts and music, a very good conversation to have.
Oh, very nice. I did not know about the wrestling. Football, I'll get along very well. Mane is an icon. I know I'm a big fan of his. I follow him. That's good to know. No, and they seem very open people too. So I think it'll be easy to connect with people, not business wise. Fantastic. Thanks so much. Coming to our last question, the seventh question. What one word or phrase that you think everyone should learn how to say in French or even in the other local languages, and why?
One thing that you can say in French is comment vas-tu? Comment ça va? So when you say comment ça va, it's asking about people, how they feel, how they are today, their health. It's very open question, so people can talk about everything. It might be about the physical condition, it might be about business, it might be about any other thing that the person would like to share. Comment ça va? But in the word that resonate more with me in Wolof is Jerejef. Well, so Jerejef is thank you. Is the thank you is to appreciate, and I guess you will have so many opportunities to say thank you and to use the word Jerejef. I practice it a lot, and sometimes I overuse it, and people say, "So what are you thanking me for?"
That's great.
And
That's
the
great.
other word in Wolof that is bahna, which is like c'est bon, it's okay, so it's fine,
Okay.
it's good for me. Like you've been served food, say okay, that's okay for me. That's kind of thing. But a very interesting language and tradition, very rich traditions, I bet everybody would love it here in Senegal if they come and visit because it's such a lovely country.
Fantastic. I definitely want to go. Never been. I'll write down these words in the article so people can see as well. But we've come to an end. We thank you. Merci beaucoup, Belo, for participating in this project. I thank you for sharing your insights, your recommendations, your experiences. I hope this interview also benefits you and brings you opportunities. Like I mentioned, I'm going to put your contact information in the article. Any final words, comments you want to share, everybody? And please mention about the book. Sounds very interesting before we finish.
No, I just want to thank you for the invitation. I mean, it has also enabled me to get to know and appreciate the massive work that you're doing. I have to say I watched some of the other interviews that you published, and I can attest that they're really insightful. So I do want to take a moment to encourage people to read the articles and watch the videos. I will make sure that I send you the link to my book. It will come out in May. This book is dealing with what I refer to as authentic African leadership. Is basically answering one single question: what leadership does Africa require today? That's the question. And so we've used a number of case studies digging into the leadership of some people, prominent people around society, to dig out what are some of the qualities that we believe will see Africa through the years or decades to come. I'll be very happy to share this with you when it comes out.
Fantastic. No, and I'll be very glad to share it with the network and put it in the article when it comes out. So thank you again. It was a pleasure to have you on. We've learned a lot, and have a great rest of the day as well. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, and I'll be in touch. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.